crush you like a paper cup.
So as we always do, we cap it off with our must starts and our must sits, our crush and busts. Adam, who is your crush for the week?
It's not a massive crush, but I will say, relative to ETR or ECR rather, I think I'm about 10 spots higher on Jacobi Meyers. I think he's a firm wide receiver 2 rather than mid wide receiver 3.
I like it a lot.
I mean, look, he's a primary target and he's done very well. Ben, exactly what I said, a firm wide receiver 2 in the games that he's been without Devontae Adams and was doing pretty well. Otherwise, we obviously just got the Gardner Minshew news today as well, which I think does help. I mean, look, he can hyper target one guy. He's not the best quarterback in the world, but he can certainly do that. Ultimately, again, not thrilled. Miami has been tough for wide receivers, and we saw that against like the best wide receiver team on Monday night. But I still think that he is a firm starter, not someone who you're thrilled about, not a wide receiver 1, but a firm starter in Jacobi Meyers.
Love that. Yeah, that's a big one for me this week too. A big flex play in my rankings. Chris, who is your crush of week 11, man?
I'm going to go, like Adam, a huge crush, but I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift, a guy that maybe so many people are going to think is, well, changes the offense in Chicago, what's going to happen. One of the few guys who's actually being productive most of this season, unlike the rest of the offense has been. And also, guy, as you alluded to, Tan, could be a beneficiary of a check-down offense if Thomas Brown gets his way. So I'm going with DeAndre Swift as a guy that I like. ECR as an 18. I think he's a guy, borderline RB2 guy. I understand the guy on my lineup this week.
I want him on line this week too, and I want to trade him after this because the schedule gets brutal, and I don't trust Thomas Brown, but I'm with you. He's going to get the touches. So if you can trade Swift after this, please go ahead and do so. Chase, who do you got, man?
I'm surprised I'm saying this. I never thought I would say anything like this, but it's Bo Nix this week for me. I'm coming around on him, boys. I'm coming around. He had a poor matchup last week, but he still turned in a QB 12 day. He was almost 4 points better too than the QB 13, which was Daniel Jones. Somehow, some way in that game. But listen, the last 6 weeks, he's QB5 overall in points per game. He's had 3 games of over 20 points. He hasn't had a single game under 14.1 in that stretch in the last month and a half. Falcons give up the 7th most points to this position. They just allowed Derek Carr and a bunch of car salesmen to put up a QB6 showing with no turnovers, no sacks. The Falcons might have a hard time with this duck, I think, this week. So I'm in on Bo Nix. He's a top 10 play for me this week, actually.
Bo Nichols.
He's an enigma to me. So what's funny about Bo Nix, for a mobile scrambling quarterback, he's horrible at throwing the ball when he's on the run. Like, absolutely literally one of the metrically worst quarterbacks throwing the ball when he's on the run. But besides tucking and run, he's effective. So, it's just so weird. So every time he watches the football, throws the football, this is Daniel Jones to me all over again. It really is. You get one good year out of it, and this is going to come crashing down the earth in a hard way, I think, next season. But for this week, Chase, I'm kind of with you. Bo Nichols is in my top 12 this week. If you're looking to stream a quarterback, makes you want to puke and stab my heart out to be able to say it, but he is.
Like I said, I never thought I'd be there either, but
playing against Atlanta Falcons, there's no pass rush out of Atlanta. If you don't have a pass rush against Bo Nix, he's good for fantasy purposes. That's just been the correlation so far, so you can't really argue with it. All right, so my guy's been pretty much the theme of the show, okay? And I managed to kind of tiptoe around this, not give everything away that I was going to talk about. But my crush is Cedric Tillman. I mean, ECR still got him at wide receiver 21. I got him at wide receiver 8. This is a wide receiver 1 to me this week going up against the Saints, who shipped off Marshawn Lattimore. Already we're bad against, well, really everything on defense anyway. That whole thing's going to collapse. I know they had a decent performance against the Falcons last week, but Mooney and London still combined for 20 targets on the perimeter. Like, Tillman's going to get his shots with Jameis Winston in a revenge matchup. And since the Amari Cooper trade, I think Chris laid this out earlier. He's been the wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy points per game, second only Jamar Chase. And the Saints have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. So it's just all aboard the Cedric Tillman train to me, especially for this week and maybe even moving forward. Now we got to flip it. Who do you want to sit? Who are we lower on the most of the ECR? Adam, who's your bust of week 11?
Yeah, so I'm going to take my layup, and 2, I'm going to give you an example of a guy who I would take Jacobi Meyers, and as you may suspect, that player is, in fact, Josh Downs at wide receiver 23 on the ECR. A case in point of a guy who I'm taking Jacobi Meyers all day, every day in this week's matchup. There's just no reason for me to trust it. I know he's going to get targeted. I know that there's the chance for the big play. I fully recognize that. I'm not necessarily saying you have to bench him, but what I am saying is he is more of a volatile flex play than he is a wide receiver 2. So wide receiver 23 to me. Same thing with Jacobi Meyers, but in the inverse, it's just probably 10 spots high for me. If you told me, low end wide receiver 3 to high end wide receiver 4, for sure, I'm with you. He's a good player, great separator. And Richardson, if there's anything you can positively say about the passing game, 1, statistically, no, but tape-wise, that was his best game when he got benched. And 2, there's the opportunity for some deep balls, some big plays. Consistency not always there, but big plays are typically happen. So, there's a possibility he does great in your bench, but I don't think the risk of a 4-point game is worth it.
Yeah, it's funny you said flip him down 10 spots because I literally have Josh Downs ranked at wide receiver 33. So, Adam, we're seeing that exactly the same way going into this week. Chris, who's your bust of the week?
This guy's the hot waiver wire pickup of the week for a lot of people. Everybody's excited always for that hot running back is Audric Estime, ECR 28. Look, Audric Estime is nobody. I know that everybody's getting excited because you saw the production possibly last week. He had 12 carries, 53 yards. He wasn't very efficient with it. Yes, he fell into the end zone. Maybe it's possible against versus Atlanta again. I'm not going to jeopardize my week necessarily trying to shove Audric Estime in my lineup. We know this Denver offense has been madly inconsistent with their running back usage this entire season. Knowing Sean Payton will probably find Tyler Beatty out off the woodwork this week and throw him out there just for hell, for shits and giggles. So this is a game that I am not going to sit there and waste Audric Estime as a guy that I have in my lineup this week if I can avoid doing so.
Chris, tell us what you really think. Nobody. You are nobody, Audric Estime. To your point, though, the guy wasn't targeted once, only ran 7 routes. He's only going to be a ball forward 15 carry guy because they're still going to involve Javonte. They're still going to involve Jaleel McLaughlin, even if Estime established himself as the lead rusher.
Well, Dan, I want to clarify too. And I mean, Audric Estime is just, I'm not necessarily extremely impressed by his talent, but I think he's got some talent. I think he's just a guy with this offensive line and the way it's constituted. They don't block for anybody in a running game. And Sean Payton can't stick to the running game for shit for most of the season. So that's 2 things I think he has going against him more so than just his talent skill set.
No, can't disagree there. Chase, who's your bust of week 11?
I don't know that it'll be a giant shock to everybody, but mine is Travis Etienne this week. He's running back 25 this week on the ECR. I think everybody assumes that he's going to just be a volume back like we all assumed in preseason when we were taking him as the RB7, 16th overall. He's RB40 right now in half PPR, both in total and in points per game. Detroit's tough against opposing running backs this week. They're giving up the 6th fewest points to the position. Mac Jones is at quarterback. There's not a ton of threat to that pass game, I don't think, with him there. So Detroit can focus on stopping the run if they want to. And even as the passing down back that he's been operating as, and getting the bulk of the action in a winnable game last week, Etienne only had 1 target last week and 11 carries for 43 yards total, 43 yards total. This game is not going to be as close, I don't think, as last week's weirdly close game with the Vikings where they couldn't finish drives and had to use their new kicker 4 times. This is an offense I don't want any part of right now if I can help it. And, Etienne's just a running back 4 for me. He's going to be outside my top 36 for sure, even though this week he's ranked at running back 25. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No, I'll blame you for not wanting to start him. I think the question coming in here from the ECR standpoint is, what's the injury to Tank Bigsby? Because he came out there with an ankle issue. Is he going to get a lot of the volume? Something, by the way, I'm using this as a plug. Something, by the way, we're going to talk about with Dr. Brian Scott tomorrow, 8 p.m. Make sure you check us out on social media at FF Advice Network. It's live. We'll be dropping it again on Friday and on our podcast apps. I think that's more the question. I'm with you. Even I ranked him as if Tank Bigsby is either going to be limited or doesn't play. I still only got him up to RB28, and it's not really very exciting in a matchup against Detroit, who's not just good against running backs on the ground. They've given up the 4th fewest passing yards to running backs too. So there's really no easy pathway here for Travis Etienne this week. There's no easy pathway for my bus guy too. And I try to avoid going with this player because I literally just had him on my bus list like 2 episodes ago. I didn't want to have to talk about him again. But then ECR went ahead and put him in the top 36 of wide receivers, and I can't figure out why. Jalen Waddle is my wide receiver 50. It's not even close. This guy shouldn't even be sniffing your lineup this week. He's had a 16% target share since Tua's return. He hasn't had more than 6 targets in a single game during that time. Now, when I talked about this 2 weeks ago, I brought up the fact that Devon Achane was a big problem because he had become the number 2 target to Tyreek Hill. Well, we have a new problem. It's Jonnu Smith, who has an 18% target share since Tua's return. That's a new problem. So now Jonnu Smith's getting targeted more. Devon Achane's getting targeted more. Tyreek Hill's a freaking wrist injury hanging on by a limb, and he's still getting targeted more than Jalen Waddle is. And part of this, too, is Tua. Look, 7.4 yards per pass attempt, down from 8.3, down from 8.9 over the last 2 seasons. This offense is keeping, Chris, to your point earlier about teams checking the ball down and keeping everything close. The offense is operating within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. Period. Doesn't matter who it is. That kills Waddle because he has to get that deep throw down the field. This is just a bench stash in case the wrist injury of Tyreek Hill finally goes, and then maybe there's some target consolidation based off of that. But right now, Waddle does not need to be anywhere near your lineups. So that's my bust of this week. Just before we close out the show, we have a few questions here coming in. Mr. Magic, he's 7-3. Good for you. Who should I package for a high-end wide receiver? I'm not going to read all of the names here. But Chris, if you could give me an idea of what you would maybe try to move if you could.
Well, I'm not really sure who you're aiming for as the high-name receivers, but if I'm looking at the package, I think your running backs are good. You don't want to touch those. I would try to look to move maybe Jones and Smith, Devonta Smith, and maybe package those two together. I like the upside of Kupp. Evans coming back off the injury. He probably has that roster spot to kind of hold on to. I'd wait to see the upside. I like Tillman a lot as receiver 1 for this Cleveland offense moving forward. So I'd probably look to package those two guys. And I do like the idea of getting CeeDee Lamb on buy low, even with whoever the quarterback winds up being.
Do you? Are you sure about that? Because we just watched 2 quarterbacks combine for 70 yards the other week.
No, and look, could be a problem regardless, but I also look at the Eagles situation with Devonta Smith, for example. I like Devonta Smith a lot. When A.J. Brown's healthy and playing, Devonta Smith gets forgotten about a lot of the times. We didn't even see Saquon Barkley utilized in a blowout with victory last week. So when he's mixed into the equation, it's hard to feed all those mouths. I like the idea of there's only one mouth to feed in Dallas at CeeDee Lamb, period.
Okay. I disagree completely. I'm trying to run away from that Dallas offense as fast as I possibly can. I think that whole thing is about to go up in a flame of smoke. But yes, target share wise, 100% CeeDee Lamb. Would you trade a Kyren for Mike Evans and Brian Robinson a full point PPR? Adam, what do you think?
I don't think so. No, I would want the Kyren side there personally. I just think he's the better player. I definitely, if you're super weak at wide receiver, maybe you consider it because Evans is a really good player. But I would opt to figure something else out personally.
Tend to agree with you. Kyren Williams has been utilized just as much as he was last season. He's getting touchdowns. This offensive line is starting to get healthier. What happens when he actually starts to get more than 3 yards of carry on top of all the touchdowns he's been getting? He might just pop it towards the end of the season.
And again, bye week wise, you don't have King Henry week 14.
Right.
Keep that
Or
in
Brian
mind
Robinson.
as you're going forward.
Or Brian Robinson.
Or yeah.
Oh, fair there too. I'm sticking with Kyren. That's going to do it for our show. Thanks for all the questions today. Thanks for tuning into Operation Domination. Make sure you follow us on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube and check out the Operation Domination Football podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. with Dr. Brian Scott to talk about the injuries of Week 11. So make sure you tune in live at Advice Network on social media, Twitter and Facebook. Catch us on Friday on YouTube or the podcast app, and we will see you guys soon. Hey there. I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.
Woo!
Ric Flair.
We're doing the whole thing where we're actually not clear yet.
It's all good.
End it.